With the recent release of Final Fantasy XVI, it can be hard to even fathom a 17th mainline entry into the FF series, yet somewhere in Square Enix's laboratories, they are likely already cooking it, with Final Fantasy XVI beginning its development after FF14 Heavensward 3.4, which was released on September 27th of 2016. This means that 16 began its development shortly ahead of Final Fantasy XV's release, which happened on November 29th. If this holds true, one would imagine that the pre-production of FF17 is already underway, and I imagine it's likely being worked on by a very small group of people, this being purely speculation of course, which is why there is absolutely no better time to vocalize our desires about
lightning?
FF17.
Yo, hold on. Is this a Final Fantasy? What is this? This isn't spoilers, is it? This is some other game? What is this? This is like a League of Legends video? What the fuck am I watching? No, that's a test? Oh, this is like a benchmark or something? Oh, it's an engine test. Oh, interesting.
And by a very small group of people, this being purely speculation of course, which is why there is absolutely no better time to vocalize our desires about FF17. These are the absolute must-haves of Final Fantasy 17. First of all, when developing a modern FF title, the engine is always a huge point of discourse. Final Fantasy 16 might be the first of the HD games to have a proprietary engine and not have major issues with it. While I think utilizing Unreal Engine 5 is probably the best way forward, it also wouldn't be a terrible idea for them to reuse Final Fantasy 16's engine. The biggest takeaway here is use tech that is stable and proven, so that you can focus on making content for your game,
not reinventing the fucking wheel that is the base of your game, technically speaking,
rather than continuously gluing together a piece of tech that keeps falling apart. Final Fantasy XIII, Final Fantasy XIV 1.0, and Final Fantasy XV all consecutively in a row had major issues with their engine during development, leading to problematic circumstances when creating these games. Thus far, FF16 and FF7R haven't gone down that road again, and hopefully things will stay that way. I really enjoyed Final Fantasy XVI's dark fantasy setting. However, I think Final Fantasy XVII should shift away from that to a world that is much more vibrant and has a greater balance between its levity and darker moments.
I absolutely agree. 16 is a phenomenal game, but it is dreary, dude. It is just, it weighs on you. The last third of the game is just heavy, dude. Like honestly, the whole fucking game. Like there's quests riddled throughout the game that are heavy.
I would also.
It's just tough, man. Like, you need some jokes. You know, you need some lightheartedness. You need something.
Also like to see the next Final Fantasy shift away from a medieval setting. I also think with the presence of Final Fantasy VII Remake's trilogy, I would like a setting that also doesn't just look like
some levity to counterbalance the pathos. Exactly.
modern world. I had to personally pick, I would love to see Final Fantasy XVII inspired by Edo-era Japan, with samurai in it. I think this would be an incredibly refreshing setting. Aside from that, there's also the incredibly impressive world shown off in the Agnes Philosophy tech demo, which many consider to be an ideal Final Fantasy setting. All of these are options.
Yeah, I mean, that's borderline FF7. I mean,
that there's also the incredible.
That's not borderline FF7. I mean, that's FF7. Like steampunk FF17.
The impressive world shown off in the Agnes Philosophy tech demo.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it reminds me of like the slums in Midgar and the Upper Plate and the Mako or Shinra headquarters right in the middle. Very much like an FF7 kind of setting, which I'm totally fine with, dude. FF7 is. Yeah, that universe, the FF7 universe, and the characters therein are phenomenal. I'm so happy to have finally played 7, Crisis Core Reunion, 7 Remake. Like, I'm gonna say it. If, in my opinion, as a gamer who has played myriad kinds of games from classic JRPGs like Pokemon and Final Fantasy, to first-person shooters like Call of Duty and Destiny, to MMOs like Final Fantasy and WoW, I've played a lot of different kinds of games. I genuinely feel like, dude, if you do not play through FF7 and some of the other entries in the FF7 universe, I genuinely feel like you're missing something in gaming. I really do. I really do. I really do. And I would say the same thing about FF6. I think 6 and 7 are just, they're just phenomenal. They really are just phenomenal.
Which many consider to be an ideal Final Fantasy setting. All of these are options that I would love to see. Now, let's talk about gameplay.
Oh no, we go straight to BG3. Side boob incoming. Here we go.
To be honest, you can thank my experience with Baldur's Gate 3 for this one.
True,
However, I think that Final Fantasy 17 should focus on a much more hardcore role-playing experience. The feedback from FF16 is abundantly clear, and the game's absence of any deep RPG elements was sorely disappointing.
Yeah.
The skill tree wasn't actually much of a tree.
Nope, not at all. And inevitably, if you want to plat the game, you have to unlock them anyway. Which, by the way, I'm literally about to fight Ultima on my second playthrough, and I was using SP boosting trinkets throughout my playthroughs, and I only just got enough ability points to finish the tree. At the end of New Game Plus is when you finish the tree, which is a gold trophy required to plat the game. So, yeah, it's a lot of playtime.
And the game lacks some basic fundamentals like elemental weaknesses. And I mentioned Baldur's Gate 3 for a very specific reason.
We'll get into that reason in a second. To be honest, the PS1 era, early PS2 era Final Fantasy games are one of the craziest runs in games. Dude, oh, easily, up until FF10. And some would even say 10 too. And some would also say 12, but was 12 PS3? No. Yes? Was 12 a PS3 game? 13 and 15 were PS3, right? Or was 15 PS4? 12 was 2. Really? So 13 was PS3, 15 was PS4? And they did re-releases too. Okay, yeah, okay.
A game that is absolutely exploding right now because of its commitment to the role-playing game genre. Now, that's not to say that FF17 needs that extent of freedom, but I do think that it should take some notes with regards to player agency, like having systems that allow you to build your character in any way that you want to from a variety of different jobs.
Yeah, but also it's overwhelming for some players, and so once again, super in-depth RPG elements, like, this is a very subjective thing. Just having more RPG elements doesn't necessarily just make the game objectively better. That's not how it works. More is not better, okay? It's about how you can interact with those systems and whether or not it's fucking digestible. And I'm gonna be honest, the reason why I have not continued BG3 is because it is not digestible for me as a player. It's extremely overwhelming, and I just can't bring myself to play it. Because it's a game, I don't want to be stressed out to understand the game. It's not fun for me.
Speaking of, we are long overdue for the glorious return of the job system. Not only do I think it is long overdue, I think it would actually contribute to the game loop of unlocking new jobs and leveling them up.
What game is this? Ardbert, Renderay, Neilbert, and Lemet? What the fuck? FF3?
And would make for an incredibly satisfying.
Someone just named the characters that? That's not actually their names? You can name them anything?
I also think that when you look at the growth systems of the past few Final Fantasy games, they've been incredibly dry skill trees.
FF1 and FF3 don't have characters with default names. Oh, see, I didn't know that.
That's not to say you can't make a skill tree really interesting.
Yeah, you guys have the context that I'm missing, so yeah.
Final Fantasy X did it with the Sphere Grid.
Oh, I can't wait for Sphere Grid. I can't wait for Sphere Grid. Oh, I can't wait to play 10 HD, dude. Please, I can't wait for Sphere Grid.
But that's because with the Sphere Grid, it
Waka, stop being racist, okay? Fucking weirdo.
Provided players the freedom to cross into different characters' traditional roles, allowing this progression system to blend versatility with strategy. And it's this level of
Lulu, keep being bodacious. You hear me? Mommy.
And it's this level of flexibility and
I'm gonna be honest, chat. Lulu was the first mommy vibe character for me. Lulu and then LeBlanc in 10-2. Those were big mommy vibes.
visual journey across
Dami Mami vibes, I mean.
the grid made leveling up feel engaging and strategic. This is something that was sorely lacking with 13's Crystarium, which didn't offer the same level of choice or flexibility.
It's called the Crystarium, huh? Huh, cool. I wonder if that inspired the name of the Crystarium in 14.
15's skill tree was alright, but it's the same type of skill tree that exists in pretty much every other game. And whatever you want to call this circle thing in Final Fantasy 16 didn't even
It's not a skill tree, I'll tell you that much.
offer what those previous ones did. All of this is to say, please give me a cool, quirky growth and magic system again, like Materia, the Sphere Grid, or hell, even Junctioning, that is fun and exciting. And
10-2 dress spheres, I actually did not mind. Being able to switch between, like, oh goodness, I can't remember even, which is white mage and black mage, for instance. Like, just having my Riku swap back and forth between them, depending on what I needed, is, like, pretty cool. I like dress spheres.
and not a generic skill
It's a skill wreath.
tree with points. Then we got the battle system on this game, and I'm gonna be honest, I absolutely, positively do not care if it's turn-based or action, and honestly, I never have.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't give a shit either. I'd be fine if it was turn-based, I'd be fine if it was action. I think both can be done really well. I think 7R proves it. And I think every other Final Fantasy that's turn-based also proves it. Both can be super fun, and I think it can attract a different kind of player, but I also like this hybrid system in 7R where if you do go into your menu to execute an ability, time essentially stops. And I think that's awesome. I also think that it'd be cool to have hybrid systems or the ability to choose between either or, depending on your preferred playstyle. Because some people do want that classic turn-based RPG experience, and some people are zoomer fucking psychopaths that want to jump around like a fucking freak out of an anime show, teleporting around, punching fucking holes in walls and blowing through buildings, and that's fine too. You know, it's just having a hybrid of the two is the best choice in my opinion. Look, I will never be a person that goes against the idea of choice, and if that means that you as the player literally just get to choose what your experience is, and that if that fits within development time and that's reasonable for them to do, fuck yes, dude. I don't give a shit if you play it on turn-based mode and I play on action. I'm not gonna look at you any different. The game's still gonna be awesome for you. The game's still gonna be awesome for me. And we both got to play the way that we wanted to. Who gives a fuck? That's the way I see it.
What makes a game good is how fundamentally engaging and immersive it feels to me, both of which can be accomplished with a turn-based or action system. That said, as I've mentioned in previous videos, it absolutely needs to be something that builds off existing systems.
I just want Square to choose the battle systems that complement the stories they want to tell best, no matter what the system looks like. Well, that's a little bit deeper nuance, because then now you're taking two different things. You're trying to attribute the design of the combat itself with the story of the game, and I think that that's important as far as like the integrity of the narrative, but I also would say that like you don't want to let that limit you either. Like if you want to have a fun, crazy DMC style combat system and the story, I guess in my brain it's hard for me to understand necessarily what that looks like. Is like what's the bad example and what's the good example of something that does not align in the way that you're talking about and one that does, because I just think it's hard for me to perceive what you mean by that. But I don't disagree, nor do I agree. I just don't really understand.
A better version of Final Fantasy XVI's iconic style system that features more RPG elements and even more brutal action. Create another version of Final Fantasy VII Remake's hybrid system, which has been lavished with praise.
I talked about one thing I wanted to see in FF16 was hybrid spells. So that would mean that summoning Mistal Winds as Garuda and then throwing your Hellfire into it as Ifrit and causing a flaming tornado. You know what I mean? I wanted to see more of that. I thought that would have been sick. Being able to actually combo different elements together to create new attacks. Oh, that would have been fucking awesome, dude. Unfortunately, that's not what it was, but I think that would have been cool. Freeze your opponent and then fucking incinerate them to do extra damage, comboing, that type of thing. But the elemental play wasn't really a factor in any capacity in the game. There's no elemental affinities, there's no elemental weaknesses, so it doesn't really matter what abilities you use on what enemy. It's literally all about stagger generation and damage that can be done inside the stagger window, which is frankly, once you get to the very top end of the game, quite a narrow selection of abilities when you're actually min-maxing, because it's a difference between 200,000 stagger damage and 1,000,000 stagger damage. So the good news, and also I guess kind of not good news, is that in Final Fantasy 16, you will almost never fight an enemy that you don't kill in the stagger bar. Once you get to the point where you're New Game Plus and you're like level 85, level 90, you have the Ultima weapon, you have your reinforced fucking Sons of Ouroboros, you have your reinforced, whatever it is, belt or whatever the fuck it's called. Like, you're pretty much shitting on everything. I had the way that you test your max stagger damage is you go into, the crystal thing, and you fight a mob that can't die. You fight something that has infinite HP, and that's the only way that you can ever see max stagger, because you become so powerful in the game that you will kill anything in one stagger bar. And I'm pretty confident that if you went into the final boss on New Game Plus at level 100, you could also probably one-phase him too, provided that the mechanics of the fight and its transitions baked within wouldn't force you out of that stagger, which they would. But theoretically speaking, like, you can do enough damage that you will fuck the bosses. It's the game. Look, this is a complaint that I had playing the game. The game just wasn't hard enough. Like, I just wanted it to be a more difficult game, and it just wasn't. I was expecting something a little bit more along the lines of like a Souls-like in difficulty, not quite like that, but just something, and it just wasn't like that at all.
Either way, but you need to do something that isn't just throwing darts at a board blindly and hoping something sticks. That being said, I think there is something fundamental that this game should have, and that is controllable party members. Square Enix has tried to get away from this many times, and while I am personally okay with controlling one character, the reception of Final Fantasy XVI's lack of such has made it abundantly clear that fans aren't. It is something that fans desperately want to see happen.
I would have liked to be able
point.
to play as Jill, to be able to play as Odin. And you know what? It's not even hard, dude. Just let me use weaker versions of their Diamond Dust abilities, let me test out what it's like to have Ramuh powers by letting me play as Ramuh. Let me play as Odin. Sid. Let me play as Jill and get to check out Shiva powers, which I'm not gonna get for way later in the game. Let me do those things. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Something that they did make happen with Final Fantasy VII Remake.
I agree, Axel.
And it's one of the most loved features of that game.
Yep.
I think there's absolutely no backing down at this point. It
took the words right out of your mouth there, Axel. In the thought right out of my brain. Yep.
Is one of the most requested feature in every upcoming Final Fantasy. And it seems like you already figured it out once, so figure it out again. But who is going to be
I'm so disappointed. Remember when I fought Airbuster and fucking wrecked Airbuster? And then we realized afterwards that I had accidentally somehow had the fucking difficulty turned down? And that I had fought Airbuster on easy mode? And then I was just very disappointed because I didn't realize that I wasn't on the right difficulty. I just thought that I was really good at the game. I was like, damn, man, I figured this out quick.
Developing this title, with Yoshi P claiming that it probably won't be him and CPU3 working on it. It makes you wonder who is.
Nah, dumbass.
We currently have this massive team there from Final Fantasy XVI, with one of the most sought-out battle directors in the industry, Ryota Suzuki. There's no way they aren't going to work on anything major, though it's entirely possible that they're going to work on a new IP instead of FF17. What else is entirely possible is that Yoshi P is just straight up lying as he has before. Prior to FF16's announcement, he dismissed all rumors about being the director of the game, and even
fake news. You know, I've been looking on the forums, on the official forums. There's been lots of posts claiming that we're gonna be announcing Final Fantasy 16. It's not true. I've come to tell you all today. I'm gonna confirm it is fake news. You don't have to trust it, fake news media. Also, Final Fantasy 16 will be released in 3 years' time.
he called those rumors annoying. Well, he wasn't lying in the sense that he wasn't the director. He was actually the producer. Furthermore, many senior staff on CPU3, such as Natsuko Ishikawa, stepped into supervisor roles after the release of Endwalker.
Gigakawa-san!
This is very similar to what happened with FF16 writer Kazuto Yumehiro after the release of Heavensward, where he would begin to work on the game that we now know as FF16. So it's possible. The other immediate option would be Creative Business Unit 1, with such staff as Yoshinori Kitase and Tetsuya Nomura. The issue here is that the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy is literally going to be taking up all of their time for the foreseeable future, while Rebirth is coming less than a year away from the publishing of this video.
Oh, I can't wait for this scene. Oh, the Bugenhagen scenes are gonna be sick.
So there's then the third game in the trilogy slated after that, assuming this game would take a generous bare minimum of 3 years to
and
come
he took the girls. Yo, whoever did this took the girls.
a year away from the publishing of this video. There's then the third game in the trilogy
He
slated
took the girls, bro. Yes.
after that, assuming this game would take a
I think I took Aerith and Barrett. I don't think I took Tifa with me.
generous bare minimum of 3 years to come out, and with the average dev cycle of the modern game being 5 to 6 years, this would likely put FF17 almost a decade away, if they were to handle it directly. And CBU1 being busy with FF7 Remake is likely why they didn't handle Final Fantasy XVI in the first place. There's also a third secret option here, and that is a brand new team inside or outside of Square Enix handles FF17. In some ways, I think I would actually find this more ideal, as it would probably bring us the freshest take on the series we've seen in quite some time.
But it could also bring the largest departure from the series you've seen in a long time, and that could be a massive failure.
However, people are quite attached to the staff at CBU1 and CBU3, and it would likely create some unease seeing entirely new faces handle it. At the same time, I think it'd be really exciting to see some fresh faces take on the series. And now, it's time for some hot takes.
Oh boy. Strap in.
The section filled with things that I specifically want that may not resonate with the broader Final Fantasy audience. For starters, keep the M rating that FF16 laid out.
Yeah,
We're
I
all
agree with
adults
that.
here. I also don't think that an M rating means that a game has to be dark and grim. If FF7R was the exact same game but had a red blood trail, it would have been M rated by default. Second take, and God, this is a hot take, I think they should have some sort of dialogue trees implemented. Yes, I am still on that Baldur's Gate 3 high. No, I don't think they should have as much insane freedom as you do in that game. And no, I don't think they should be as frequent as Western RPGs have them.
But not as linear as they exist now.
But I do think they should be more frequently a thing and allow you to have some type of player agency in branching scenarios. Next, I think there needs to be some type of interactivity in the world. I feel like this is something that quite a number of other modern games have done quite well, but in FF, things are just scenery and nothing else. Let me climb a tree, loot things, set something on fire. Just have some sort of interactivity with the world itself. But these are just my thoughts on what
I don't think those are hot takes.
Fantasy 17 could and should be. Let me know in the comments below what you most want to see from FF17. And be sure to check out Guild Wars 2, link in the description below.
I like that.